Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we are talking about Moon Patrol.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron, is there anything more exciting to the male adolescent mind than a space base?
Well, I could think of a couple things, but it's up there near the top, Bode. Because, I mean, listen, here's the way I look at it, all right? You get a base on the moon, all right, for
Mm-hmm.
example, because remember we played Shuttle a couple weeks ago? And
Yeah.
that was like a super realistic uh, attempt to see what it's like to fly the shuttle, right? And this week will be no exception. This is exactly what would happen if you landed on the moon. It's exactly how you do it. It's just like readying people. It's sort of like the last Starfighter. But when you get to the moon, you get a base up there. Then you can start branching out to the other planets, the cooler planets,
Mm-hmm.
because the moon's not really a planet; it's just sort of a big lump. You know, you could go to the moon, but you want to really get to Mars. You know what I mean? And then you
Mm.
want to get to like Jupiter or something, or
Yeah.
Uranus, even something like
I really,
that.
I've always wanted, you always see like Voyager and all the probes. They're going around Jupiter.
Yeah,
I want to just plunge right in that thing. I want to know what's going down underneath the clouds.
it's a gas giant, isn't it?
It
In
is a
there.
gas giant. And now I mean, some people think that it's just gas all the way through and there's a tiny core. I
Yeah,
don't buy that science stuff. I know what's really going on at Jupiter and it's a
yeah,
party. I
yeah.
mean, like just look at the clouds. Like it looks like one of those like sand things. Remember how I used to get the sand things that were between the two sheets of glass,
Oh
and you
yeah,
could go like this?
yeah. We
Yeah.
never had one of those. Those were
I don't
cool. I
know, but
remember
I feel
those.
like whenever I held one of those things, I was like, yeah, I'm just like looking up at the sky. People that are on Jupiter, they look up at the sky and that's their whole life. That's awesome.
Yeah. I just read an article today. You know that ship they sent out in like '77? Was it the Voyager? I
Yeah.
believe it was.
Yeah.
So like, it's been broadcasted for all these years, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like here recently, they thought, okay, this thing's boned, right? It's not work. Engine's jacked up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like 10 years ago, the main thrusters were like, yeah, these things don't work. They turned on some heaters and they stopped working. So it was a last ditch effort this time around. They like fired up the thrusters and they declogged and worked. So it's still
Oh,
working.
wow.
After all these years.
Voyager 1, that's the main plot point of the Star Trek the motion picture.
Yeah, yeah. But other than that, it's done a lot of good stuff. That's the one that's got the record and
Yeah.
the guy like going like this. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
he's doing.
Yeah,
You can't
it's a
really see
gesture
it.
of peace. Yeah, that's what I do.
Did they put any modern pop? I wonder who they put on that record.
I know there's Louis Armstrong is on there. And so
That's a good
that's pretty
choice.
modern.
Who would
Yeah.
you put on? Like, if you had to pick one band to put on a record right now, who that's into space? Like, who would it be?
Ray
And it had to be
Stevens,
living.
The Streak.
The Streak. Like,
I
you
mean,
mean like Ray
yeah,
Stevens?
yeah,
The
Ray
Streak.
Stevens saw, yeah. I mean, there's nothing that really encapsulates, modern culture on Earth. And we want the aliens to hear that first.
Listen, I can't top that. Let's go to the game. Man, that's a good tune right there. That could be on the ship too, Bo. That's the theme from the arcade version of Moon Patrol.
Yeah, yeah. So Moon Patrol, this game was released way back in June of 1982 in the arcades. This thing was published by IREM. IREM was a relatively new company this was released. They were founded in '79, and they went on to publish tons and tons and tons of games. But their first arcade game was from way back in '74. They did a game called Clean Sweep. That's their earliest credited game, at least on Moby. Um, but I believe that their first one of their first forays into the golden age of arcade is Moon Patrol. Um, Aaron, do you remember? I mean, when Moon Patrol came out in '82, you were 11 years old.
Oh yeah.
This was, you were definitely going, you'd been to arcades. Was Moon Patrol one of those games that was able to escape the arcade and move into, your Sears or the front of Hills or someplace like that?
Well, it's funny. I do remember seeing this at like a convenience store too. When
Hmm.
this came out, though, I mean, like, of course, arcades were rocking in
Right.
'82. But God, man, I wish I could grab a handful of you guys that were too young for that and just take you back. Because I mean, even stuff like the Galloping Ghost, it's like overkill. It's
Yeah.
hard to get that happy medium. But there was this medley of sound. It was beautiful, man. It lured you in like a siren song. And
Hmm.
Moon Patrol was right there with that iconic tune. And when this came out, I mean, this was a real good looking game. I mean, aside from the fact that the premise of it was awesome, just like you said, it appealed to a young kid. But the look of it, it looked nice. If you've never seen the arcade cabinet, it's got this sort of like a pastel blue with like a darker stencil of like a full size stencil of the Moon Patrol stenciling, and it looks great. It's a real inviting looking cabinet. The marquee's this nice sort of a black with the moon buggy on it. It's just a real good looking cabinet. It sounds good. Then you play it, and they took this concept, which has been ripped off a million times. They took this concept of driving a moon buggy across the moon, and they really made it sing. It's such a great idea. Like this is one of those games from the early '80s where you just stand back and you just sort of applaud. Like whoever came up with this is a genius, you
Right.
know. And
Right.
so yes, this one did make the trip out sometimes. It's not one I saw. I mean, listen, the ones I saw most of the times that made the trip out was your Galagas, your Miss Pac-Mans, your Pac-Mans at the time, Asteroids. I saw all those more than this one, but this one did get out occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, 82, I really feel like was the first year where video games really came into their own in terms of offering a variety of gameplay experiences that weren't just your typical maze games, race games, and shoot 'em up games. I'm going to give you just a quick list of the games that were released in 1982, Aaron, and
Okay.
tell me if you can think of a more banner year.
All
Okay.
right, give it to me.
Okay. January saw the release of Zaxxon and Ms. Pac-Man. So Ms. Pac-Man is
Ooh,
copyrighted in 1981, but actually came out in January of 82.
that's a
Then you've
huge
got,
month.
yeah. Then you've got Dig Dug, released in April of that month. Okay.
Yeah.
August, Donkey Kong Jr. August also Jungle Hunt.
Oh man, it's another one.
Right. September, Pole Position. Pingo. Okay. October, Mr. Do and Cubert.
Wow.
November, Time Pilot. November also, November also Burger Time. Okay. Plus there
Wow.
were also there and then, okay, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Well, Williams got on board two little games, Joust and Robotron.
At the,
Okay.
at like the end of the year.
No, that's also November. That's also
Wow.
November. So, I mean, 1982, kind of a big deal year.
They're
In
they're all great, and I love
yeah,
every one of those games. Like
yeah,
you picked zero duds amongst those,
right.
because even games that like you don't think about now. Like I mean, most of those games you still think about, but even a game like Pole Position where they release sequence stuff, if you were there when that came out, like your brain melted. Like it talked. It looked like a racing machine. It had a wheel you could sit down and drive it. It was so far ahead of everything else you'd seen, and I'd say it was probably the weakest one on the list, and it was still iconic. Those were
Yeah,
all great.
yeah. So the designer of this was good old Takashi Nishiyama. Okay. This guy, he has what you call a pedigree. Okay.
Yeah.
This was one of his first jobs, was developing Moon Patrol. He really had a lot to do with the parallax scrolling. This is one of the first games that features that parallax that Amiga lovers love so much. So Amiga lovers, this is where all of your talking points come from, right here, Takahashi. But then he went on and did a couple duds. Kung Fu Master, Street Fighter, Fatal Fury, King of Fighters.
Oh yeah,
So,
all great. Yeah,
yeah.
what a stud. My
Yeah.
God. He's amongst the all-time greats. You got to say it.
Right. So this is where he got his start. This is the Moon Patrol is where it all came from.
God, can you imagine getting that assignment? We need you to make a game. Put somebody on the moon, and then he comes back and says, "Here you go." I bet the bosses were crapping themselves with delight over that.
Right, right. This game runs on the IREM M52 hardware. This was, I believe, Moon Patrol was the first game to run on this particular board. It was later used on games like 10-Yard Fight, Traverse USA,
Yeah.
and a Tropical Angel, which I've not played Tropical Angel, but it looks pretty cool. IREM, they developed a pretty good lineup of games there in the 80s. Um, so a little bit about the game. You play as a police officer on the moon in a city called Luna City. Okay. You are assigned to Sector 9, the home of the toughest thugs in the galaxy. And your job is to basically, destroy the thugs, the aforementioned thugs, which are I never did you ever look into the backstory of this, Aaron?
No, I don't. I don't think I've ever heard this before. So
Yeah.
yeah, I never knew you were
So
a
this is
cop.
this is coming from Wiki. I am inclined to believe it. And so what you have to do is you shoot down UFOs, you blow up rocks, and you jump over craters. That is the game. This game takes place on 2 courses, and each course is divided up into 26 checkpoints. Each checkpoint is identified with the English alphabet. There are 5 major checkpoints that you need to get to: E, J, O, T, and Z. And when you get to each one of those, you get a new stage with a new background theme. The obviously, as you go through the game, the game increases in difficulty with each major checkpoint too. Um, there are the top portion of the screen shows a timeline or a map of your traversal. So it's almost like a gauge that fills up from light blue to red as you go across. This has got to be something that was new at the time too. I mean, this is just, we're very early days, and these are sort of the archetypes that we get in games later on. At the end of the stage, your time is spent. It's compared to an average, which is really weird. I can't think of a lot of other games that do that, but there's an average time, and if you beat that average time, you get bonus points. Can you think of another game that was like that?
Not at this time. I can't. And it's darn clever, because once you have this thing on location for a while, and you've had it on for a while, and you've got a lot of people playing it, and that makes it more interesting. It almost gives us a racing appeal. I mean, you could play this like a speed game if you want. I'm not good enough to do that, but I mean, still, I like having that. It's like a nice added bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You get extra lives at 10,000, 30,000, and 50,000 points. So you get an opportunity for 3 extra lives. After that, you get no more extra lives. And the game now, there are some conflicting elements here. There are some versions of this board that offer a feature that was first introduced in Moon Patrol, according to the 2007 documentary Chasing Ghosts. And it claims that there are some versions where you can actually not only pay to continue, but pay to keep your score intact as well.
Oh,
And so, according to this documentary, Moon Patrol was the first arcade game to allow you to continue with score retention. So you're paying for your high score essentially. Now on Wikipedia, the game says that you do not get your points scored from one game that do not carry over to the second one. So I'm not sure if there are different versions of the board or what's going on, and I can't remember honestly if I was when I continued, if my high score carried over. I want to say no, but I just can't remember.
I played
Um,
this on the Mister this week. The
mhm,
original.
right.
And it did let you continue. This was, as far as I can remember, this I don't remember a game ever letting you continue. There may have been
Mhm.
some, but I don't remember it. But because I remember that was sort of people mentioned it. But I don't remember the scores. I don't remember. I don't think I've ever seen one where the scores carried over. because that would absolutely be not fair because you could just pay and play forever. But yeah, that the continuation feature in this was actually, to me, it was welcome. So I like that aspect of it.
This game did pretty well on the charts. You know, it's hard to be a chart topper in this sea of so many great games. But according to the replay charts in January 1983, it was among the 5 top grossing arcade games in North America. So that's pretty
Wow.
exciting.
Yeah.
This game, of course, was ported to everything under the sun. And but it was also remade a couple times, and it is currently available on the Evercade, Aaron, your favorite current game system. So yeah, that's just a little rundown of Moon Patrol. I was trying to see when IREM went under. It looks like that they went under in the late 90s. There were some acquisitions that happened. And I think that they sort of got enveloped into SNK and somehow.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what happened to IREM. List of notable IREM games. Looks like that they did their earliest one that I've heard of, I think, is Moon Patrol. It looks like a lot of they released, you know, a good 15 games before then, but a lot of mahjong games, as you might be aware of.
Sure.
But then as soon as Moon Patrol happened, they were 10-yard fight, Kung Fu Master, Load Runner, licensed from Broderbund, the arcade version of Load Runner. You know, so again, and IREM, of course, most famous in the Nintendo world as being the very first third-party developer for the NES.
Did the NES get a version of Moon Patrol?
No, it
Huh.
didn't. My guess is that by the time the NES was launched, Moon Patrol was a little bit too primitive to get to
Yeah.
be involved in that first run. It's the same reason why you didn't get, you know, Miss Pac-Man or Space Invaders right out of the gate. They really wanted to show that their machine could do more contemporary games. That's why you got like Popeye and Donkey Kong Jr., stuff like that.
Well, just if I may, just have a minute here, talk about this game.
Please,
One of
please.
the things I like about, Moon Patrol is a funny game to me because what you've got here is a game, just the source material for the game is already great, okay? The premise of the game, okay? They could have just had this game and done basically not that much with it, and it would have been fine. But what they did was they also introduced a lot of great things that I'd never seen in an arcade game, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the checkpoints, right? This is brilliant. But Amiga authors, take note, for God's sakes. Is there a game that has a better checkpoint system than this? I haven't seen it, and it still holds up because it doesn't frustrate you. You go back to when you die, you go to the last letter you were at, and then you start from there. You give it another whirl. You don't have to go all the way back, at the beginning of the level. It works. It's great. When you go across the level, it feels like, okay, I've accomplished this.
Right. Right.
Then on top of that, not only do you have, of course, the Moon Patrol buggy has a gun that shoots forward and a gun that shoots upward. That opens up a whole world of possibilities because you're fighting aliens from above, and you're shooting rocks and tanks and other impediments in your way from the front. So that opens up the elements of gameplay that opens up is great. But one thing that this game does, just about any other game, is this game unfurls in front of you like I wish every game did. On the first level, all you've got to do is shoot a few rocks, easy ones, shoot some bad guys, easy ones, jump a few holes. It's nice and easy, right? Then on the second level, they introduce more difficult jumps, double rocks, right? A few more aliens. Then you get to a level where they introduce mines. Okay, you've got to jump over the mines, and they don't go crazy. They let you learn the mines. Then they introduce the boulders that are coming down the hill, and they introduce them slowly. And eventually, it's a little bit tougher. And then on the last level, they introduce the tanks so you can get used to them. But they're building you up. Because once you get past the first wave of this, then you're in like the championship wave. And in that way, they go to work. And even then, there's stuff that happens in those extra ways that I mean, a lot of people never even see. Different types of ship drops, these pits that have flowers in them, and all this other weird stuff that happens. So even at that point, the game is still unfolding in front of you. But the first level gives you it's almost like a tutorial level, except you don't know you're being taught because it's still a challenge. You can still get killed on it, but you're being taught all the elements of the game you need to survive. The double rocks, the double-sized holes, avoiding the ships that drop the crater makers and stuff. This is all good stuff. The fact that you have to accelerate, decelerate to avoid downward bombs, it adds an element to the game. You can't just put the thing in. You just can't go as fast as you want all the time. You have to learn to, how to balance how fast you're going. And they put little very evil puzzles in the game that involve rocks and holes or multiple boulders and of different sizes that you have to kind of figure out how to get past them. And it can be frustrating, except for the fact that they put you back at the last checkpoint. So you know what's coming. You learned a lesson. Okay, here's what do I do to get past this? Let me try this. I think no one really talks about that, and I think that's something that should be highlighted in this game. It's not just a brilliant game with great graphics and a catchy tune. It's actually someone who put this together designed it brilliantly. Does this ring with you, Boat?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. The thought that went into the game, for such a quote unquote simple game, the thought and the consideration for the player in level design. I mean, I haven't seen another arcade that does it quite as well as Moon Patrol. I mean, contrast this with something like Defender. Where Defender, you put in the quarter and you're screwed immediately.
Yeah.
This game, I'm just going to repeat what you said. It introduces each element of the game one at a time, and because of the checkpoint system, when you know immediately what you have to do, where you have to go, and how you are to do it. I don't understand why. Well, I do understand why more arcade games didn't do this. I think it has to do with the fact that you can play longer if you're eased into things than if they just throw you in the deep end. But as a player, it's so welcome to have a game that the difficulty curve ramps up at just the right speed.
Yeah, I agree. And then we should talk about once you get past the first wave, that second wave. Or second course. They're really courses. That's the way they're defined in the game. They take off the kid gloves, and then you go to work, and it is challenging. I don't think I've ever gotten past the second course without adding credits. And then the third course is brutal. So once you get up into that area, you've got to be a top player to advance. They introduce, among other things, one of my favorite things that they introduce is you'll be driving along, and this other moon vehicle will pull up behind you. You know what I mean? And so he just sits back there being a jerk. And then all of a sudden, he'll take off, and you've got to jump. So he shoots under you, then you blow him up for points, which is an awesome feeling when you can pull it off. But they add other elements later on, including, like I said, the spaceships actually drop these sort of objects down that fall in the road, there. And once you get, I haven't gone past the third course, so God only knows what's past that. But I've played long enough to see the flowers, the other cars, stuff like that. So there's a lot. There's plenty here if you want to be try to master it, including inclines and and you go up and you go down. They're rolling stuff at you. It's a brilliant game, and that's why we still talk about it. It was just a very well designed game.
I think a lot about the Atari 8-bit and the C64 sort of takeoff on this game is BC's Quest for Tires. It's essentially a branded Moon Patrol.
Yeah, I never really thought about it, but I'd say that's good. I think BC, they did a good job. You're right. It really never occurred to me until just the second you said it. But yeah, it's very similar. But they did I don't know if you read BC's comic strip back in the day, but I did. And so they put a lot of elements from the comic in that game. It was so cartoony and well done. I don't think it's the game Moon Patrol is, but it's certainly a spectacle. It's a good
Right.
looking game on every system.
Right. Another thing that I love about this game is that there's always something new right around the corner. Whether
Yeah.
it's a new background, whether it's new enemies, whether you're dealing with, like you said, changes in elevation, it keeps your attention and it makes you want to continue. When you put that quarter in, you want to see what's coming up next. And it's not unlike, playing a beat 'em up or something like that, where it's a combination of wanting to finish the course and also just wanting to see what's behind the next level. And for a 1982 game, there weren't a whole lot of games that sort of did that. Like you said, the checkpoint system, it has to be, if it's not the first, it has to be the first major release with the checkpoint system.
Yeah.
And I still think it looks impressive to this day. I still think that the parallax effects and the shading and the coloring of the different backgrounds, it's got this very otherworldly feel to it that kind of reminds me of the Marvin the Martian Looney Tunes, when
Yeah.
he'd go be walking around the expanses of space. It kind of reminds me of that. So yeah, this game, I mean, obviously, I love this game just like you do. And we need to talk about the music. The first time I ever played this game was when I was in high school. One of my Boy Scout leaders, who ended up living in my neighborhood that I live in now, he was getting rid of all his old computers. He had a C64. I think he had two 664s, maybe a C128 and a C64. And he knew I was into old computers, and he's like, "Hey, you want this stuff?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I want this stuff." And he's like, "You got to play this game, Moon Patrol. You're this buggy, and you're just going across the surfaces. It's got this great tune. I love the tune." He would go on and on about the tune. The tune is great. This is like the first time that I can think of where you have video game background music that is not like public domain, like old Susanna or Dixie or whatever, something like that. This is like a funky sort of contemporary sounding tune, and it gets you going. It's cool. It's a groovy little number.
It doesn't get old, and you think
No.
it would, because it's not like it's not like it goes on and on with a whole new verses.
Right, it loops pretty regularly, but you're right. There's just something about it. It's with the groovy nature of it that makes it not grate on you.
One thing they did in this was, and the music and the backgrounds, like they're not too busy, but
Mhm.
they're like the shading, the way it looks, and the sound. It's all been done. It's all because the main game takes the front of the stage, but these are
Right.
nice little dressings for the backgrounds. The little explosions when the enemies miss you and they blow up part of the dirt. And you feel like you're like, man, it's just like you see this with a tank in World War II, and they miss a tank, and it's a good look. I mean, I don't throw around this is the perfect arcade game thing that often, but I mean, I have trouble finding faults in Moon Patrol. That's for sure.
Mhm. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention that I love is that when you start the game, you don't just appear on the course. You have sort of a landing area or a takeoff zone where you feel like you're leaving the safety of of your base, of your space base, and you're
Yeah,
going out into the wilderness. It's little things like that. It's little things like that that you can tell that the people that made this game really appreciated what they were doing.
I agree. I agree. So with that in mind, I guess we'll talk about the Amiga version that has been ported down. Boy, guess who did this one? It's our old buddy. We've talked about more than a few times, JOTD. If you're not in the know, this is Jean-Francois Fabre, who ported this over under the moniker of Moon Patrol 500 boat. This is a release from last year, 2024. This will run on ECS or AGA. And this was a transcode for the 6800 or 68,000 machines. He had some help. JOTD did the Z80 to 68,000 conversion. He also converted the graphics over to Amiga graphics and made the sound effects Amiga sound effects. A fellow named No Nine did the music for this. He converted the Amiga music over. Then he had some help from a fellow named Ross that helped him with some scrolling. And so then he had this actually got a boxed release. The box art was done by MRV2K, and the menu on the floppy version was Damon D. So there are several flavors of this boat. If you've got the OCS Amiga, this will run on 512 chip, 512 fast, but not real fast. It's 25 frames per second. It'll be a sort of a low graphics detail, and you have to run these off the drive. Then you've got the ECS version, which will run on a 1 meg ECS 68000. This will also run around 25 frames per second with a little bit of slowdowns. If you've got AGA, the AGA uses a fast DMA mode to run at 50 frames per second if you have some fast memory in there. And if you've got a 6820 plus, you get the full enchilada. I ran this on the Mister, and it ran quite nicely. I didn't have anything to complain about when it comes to the speed of it. I didn't really. There may have been a tinge of the game being a little slower on the Amiga version, but it wasn't super noticeable to me. What about you? What were your experiences, and how did you run this thing, Boater?
I played this on the Mister.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of JOTD ports, and they're all great.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
fabulous. This is really the first one that I get this sometimes when I'm trying to do A/B testing with music, going back and forth between various sources or whatever. I really had a hard time finding differences between the arcade version and the Amiga version. The aspect ratio is just a little bit more squished down, I think. But as far as the sound and the colors, and the graphics, everything it seemed very, very accurate to me.
I would agree with you. I mean, I normally, and you're right, we've played a couple of his here recently, and there may be a little artifacting or something that pops up, but I didn't see anything that would be out of place. And I played the crap out of this game because one of the things I want, I trust JOTD pretty a good deal, but still, I wouldn't feel like I was doing a good job if I didn't take this thing into the later levels. You know what I mean? And so I did. And the good thing is, since I had the ability to keep going, I could keep going. And so I played on this thing, and I played well past where I could normally get. And the
So you
thing
feel like
is,
it's a little bit easier because it's a little bit slower, right?
God, no. I don't think it's. I mean, if it's a little bit slower, it would be an eyelash. No, I mean, what I say is I kept playing by continuing, and normally I wouldn't do that because I feel bad.
I see.
But I wanted to play into the later levels, and what was fun about it is I got further than I think I've ever gotten at doing that, and it was so I got to see a lot of stuff I hadn't seen. I'm an old Donkey Kong guy, as you know, and so. And there are elements of Donkey Kong in this game. It's the jumping of the because there's just a method to it. Because much like Donkey Kong, you've got to have top control of your, in this case, the buggy, the Moon Patrol buggy. You've got to have control of that thing and to be able to speed up and slow down to make it work properly to get over these different types of jumps. You're jumping backwards, you're jumping forwards, you're jumping a little bit, you're speeding up, and so. I can tell when something's off, is what I'm saying. I'm not the king dog of games, but I think anyone that's a good hand at those sorts of games could tell. And if something was off, it would ruin the game because this game requires peak top shelf accuracy. You can't go half job on this or it won't work. I think you'd agree with that.
Absolutely.
And when it came, now don't get me wrong, I died a lot, but it wasn't because the game screwed me. I screwed me by just dying. I didn't encounter any glitches in the game. I take that back. I did find one oddity. When I was adding credits one time, because you use the credit button is also your fire button, right? So when you add credits, the credit sound just stayed as I played the game. And so all through the game, I kept hearing the credit noise as I was binging up. I don't know if I did something wrong or whatever, but aside from that, that was the only thing I saw. And there was plenty of things that could go wrong in a game like this because of all the stuff that's going on. So I can only discuss my personal findings, but I didn't have a single bit of problem with this thing. How far do you usually get on this game, Boat, when you play it?
Not very far.
Like, how far
Yeah,
would
I
that
mean,
be?
I get almost all the way through the first course.
Yeah,
And like you said, you know, I feel bad about continuing because I don't feel like I've earned it. But I always have fun playing. Another thing that I just can't, I got to keep talking about all the great things about this game. It really
yeah,
is a masterpiece. The undulation of the terrain and the way that your buggy wheels sort of you know, the suspension on your buggy wheels take those undulations. It's so cute. It's so cool to watch your thing do it. Like, I'm impressed by little things, you know, and again, we're talking about 1982, and I mean, I just think that it's such clever design because they knew that if they put like those little changes in elevation, they're like micro changes. They don't
yeah.
affect gameplay at all. But what they do is they show off the sort of off road ruggedness of your buggy, and I just think that's so awesome. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Oh, I agree with you on that. I mean, again, I know it sounds like we're just blowing smoke, but we can't help ourselves. The wheels are awesome on this, and the thing is, if you're an old like space buff like I am, and you watch those old Apollo missions where they actually had the buggy up there on the moon, you know, and you watch them and you thought to yourself, as a little kid, I thought to myself, man, that's got to be the best. You know what I mean? They're up there, they're flying around the moon, they're having a good old time. So like, it's not a stretch because I've seen those buggies, and the
Mhm,
wheels do
mhm.
look, they do wobble, you know, and so it's not a stretch to think to yourself, hey, this is how they would do it. And so I'm guessing the fellow that put this game together had seen that footage. He's probably about my age, and was like, and then you're right because it's funny. I never thought about it, but the buggy itself doesn't really move all that much, but the wheels are going bonkers all the
Right,
time,
right.
you know. And it's a great effect. It's a brilliant effect. That makes it look more realistically like you're going over real rough terrain because it's the moon. I often joke that riding on our back roads or going to your house is like driving on the moon
Heck yeah.
because the potholes are so bad.
Yeah,
We could use this thing in real life
that's right.
to
I
try
need
to
a
get
moon
around.
buggy to get home every day, so
Now I want to put this. By the way, just a FYI, if you pick this up, of course you've got your joystick, and you can use two buttons on this. You've also got there's cheat keys built in. F1 will complete a section, F2 will complete a level, and F4 will turn on and off invincibility. So they've built some stuff in there to help you out. This is one of the mini games that is available over on itch.io. We'll link this up at the bottom. This is a game that's, I mean, you can buy this game for free on right now. Put it on your actual Amiga or your emulation device. But it would behoove everyone, even if you've already got this game, to go over to itch.io and drop JOTD and his cohorts a buck or two to keep the ball rolling. I mean, the work that this guy and his gang is doing is top shelf. I'm like Boat. I mean, we went on and on about the arcade game. There's not much to say about the Amiga version because it's the arcade game. I mean, there's not much. And so when you get that kind of quality in your conversion, what else can you say, Bode?
that's right. That's
Did we
right.
get any
Well,
action on the Discord on this?
we did. Pajaka writes in. He says Moon Patrol is right up there in the annals of retro gaming history, and it's one of those games I've loaded up on numerous occasions to have a play, and it's definitely one of those machines I would play in a real arcade when I see it. So how does the Amiga port stack up? Pretty darn good. Graphics, sound, playability, it's all there. Comparing to the arcade, you can see the Amiga version's a little sluggish and doesn't quite fill the screen as much, but overall, none of that detracted from the fun I had playing it. I asked a little while back that with arcade perfect recreations, are these ports worth it now? And I think the answer is yes. Being able to take the path not taken and see what could have been is an awesome effort. Another solid effort from JOTD. 9 out of 10. Graham W. Vebke writes Moon Patrol is a classic arcade game. I would say it's in the top 25 of all time. The concept of the game is simple enough, yet it's challenging and at times frustrating as well, but not to the point of feeling cheap. The port is very good, and as Pajaka said before me, the only issue I can find with it is the speed. It does feel a bit slow. I would be happy playing this if I could not play the arcade original again, which gives this an 8 out of 10 score. BFB Triple I writes, It's Moon Patrol. It's JOTD. It's going to be a winner. JOTD offers this port in every flavor under the sun. OCS and ECS at 25 FPS and AGA at 50. The PAL WHD load is timed for a virtual 55 Hz, just 1.7 Hz shy of the arcade timing. Crank it to NTSC and you can play faster than the arcade original. Only JOTD makes it possible. A super unfair 9.5 out of 10 for me and not a perfect score because those Amiga TV ads promised us OCS was arcade perfection, and I still want to believe. Great reviews as always. If you are a patron of our show, you can leave us a review for us to read on the air of the games we play every week.
You know, we've been spoiled this summer by the Summer of Arcade, and I hope those boys keep cranking out the good stuff because I think this one was without flaw.
Are you a sketchy tech? Do you have the right tools for the job? Have there been incidents? Next time, don't try to fix it yourself. Send your broken Amiga to Retro Rewind. Get a full diagnostic, a reasonable estimate, and the peace of mind knowing that your machine is in the hands of real technicians with decades of experience and cutting-edge repair equipment. Save 10% off your repair with the promo code Amigos10. Thank you to RetroRewind.ca for supporting this episode.
All right, Aaron, as we roll on through the Amigos Summer of Arcade, we've got one of the biggest events of our year coming up. Year number 4, Aaron. Let's talk about what's going on next week. It's freaking Boat Fest, aka the International Retro Computer Expo.
Indeed, bud. Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I'm
nervous.
I never get nervous for these things. I always just show up and then wish I was dead. But we want to show off some of our Discord communities posters that they've done. They've done a great job, and we're going to print some of these out and hang them around town. As always, if you're interested in going to Boat Fest, ircexpo.net is coming up. You can get your tickets. You can get a day pass for $10, all the way up to the full event for $40, or you can buy a virtual ticket even. We would love to see you there. It's in the lovely social event space in downtown Hurricane, West Virginia. This is year number 4, and I am so happy to be returning to the same location twice in a row. That is so much of the stress for me in this event was just making sure that the location worked out, and we know it's a known quantity this year.
You don't want to bury the lead because it's funny. Yes, Boat Fest is coming up, but this will be, I mean, it's weird. It's eerie how close it is to being actually the date. This will be our 10th year anniversary show.
That's
we're
right.
going to get into.
That's right.
And so next week we will have been around for 10 glorious and not so glorious years of podcasting and YouTubing and Twitching all up and down the roads. I'm not 100% sure how it's going to go down next week, Boat, but it'll be fun to celebrate with all of our buddies and supporters around, because we would absolutely, I promise you, we would have been long gone if it wasn't for you folks that tune in every week, that lend us either financial support, moral support, or anything in between, because I can't tell you how valuable that's been over the years. You don't do anything for 10 years unless you enjoy it. And I'm enjoying it now more than ever. And that's not just some kind of generic crap that a host would say. It's a fact, brother. Partially because we've got the technical side ironed out, because we struggled for so many years trying to get, including this year. But I think we finally have gotten it, but I hope.
I think so. And of course, coming off a great game like Moon Patrol, it's easy to enjoy the show. You know,
yeah, you ain't kidding.
Some weeks we get done talking about the games, and I just want to end it all. So, all right. Speaking of ending it all, we're done. We're out of here. We will see you next week at Boat Fest for our 10th anniversary live show. Until then,
adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server.
Visit patreon.com/Amigos Podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.